We are beginning our first Singapore dialogue on innovation, and the theme is around, which you're going to hear a little bit about from our two co-chairmen, Dr. Lily Chan and Dr. Yossi Vardi, on this InnoFest unBound event we're doing in Singapore, where Asian innovation meets the world. We're going to hear from Yossi and from Lily, and afterwards we're going to have an interactive discussion talking about how Singapore is this hub of innovation. You'll hear from us shortly. We have some phenomenal panelists. So, ladies and gentlemen, please may you join me in welcoming to the stage Dr. Lily Chan and Yossi Vardi.
Okay, thanks everybody for stopping by, and we're really pleased to see all of you here. Well, the reason why we're here is we think Singapore should be a destination for all of you to go to next year. Why? Innovation, startup companies, technologies, understanding Asian culture, tapping onto one of the largest markets, not just Singapore, but the surrounding countries. So we're really pleased, and I think Yossi will talk about it, to partner with Acre White to co-organize an event next year. It's an event that we've been doing. I'm from the National University of Singapore, and it's an event we've been doing called InnoFest for the last 5-6 years. But next year, we're teaming up with Acre White, with Yossi, with Daniel and the team to really do something that is really fantastic, and would love to see all of you there.
Thank you very much. Anybody who was in Singapore, please raise your hand. Yeah, 5, 7. Anybody who was not in Singapore, please raise your hand. Okay, so again, we have about 15 guys who haven't been in Singapore, 6 guys who have been in Singapore, and 80 guys who don't have any idea what we are talking about.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I want to share with you an observation of mine. Once a year, I'm co-hosting an event for the Far East with Sir Martin Sorrell. Usually we are doing it in Phuket, in Thailand.
Oh, that's not fair.
We are now going to correct it with Acre White. And we have people which are coming from all the Far East, and believe me, the most talented people are invited to this event. We have about 400 slots, and the population in the Far East is a little bit bigger than 400 people, so we get them the best and the brightest. And anybody on the event is always impressed with the resolve of the Singapore people. You know, they are very alert, very smart, not to say that the others are not, but they are really, they remind me of the Israelis, which I don't know if it's a compliment or defamation.
We can have a discussion on that.
Yeah. And really it's an amazing country, small country, but with lot of human capital. And next year, on the invitation of the Singapore government, Danny and Anthony are going to create a great event there, and I'm going to claim the credit, which is usually the way we divide the responsibility. They do the work, I get the applause. Give me a little bit of applause. Together with the Singapore government, we intend to, this is intended to be an international event, and we are going to bring people from Europe, from United States, and from the Far East, from Israel, and as usual, as we do it always, it will not be only discussions, but also we will add a component of fun, because by now you know our slogan, the heck with productivity, let's have fun. I'm not sure that the Singaporean government confirmed.
We're learning to have fun.
You're learning to have fun.
Yeah, we're learning to have fun.
It's not a shame to have fun, you know.
Slowly learning to have fun in Singapore.
Yeah, and by the way, having fun is very important. Not long ago, a passage, an article of Isaac Asimov from 1959 was found, and I may send it to you. So in your management school, you show it, and he says that in order to be creative, since being creative always involved in assuming risk of failure, etc., you have to do it in a very permissive atmosphere. So you have to be a little bit foolish, a little bit playing, etc. So this is what unleashed the freedom to be creative. You know, if you sit on a suit and you have this, how you call this? Tie, this thing that the Europeans are putting under their neck in order to block the flow of blood into the brain, you know, so people are not getting too smart. So you get loose and this is enhancing creativity. So that's the idea. This was a shameless propaganda for the conference for next year. Since this is the last talk for this evening, I would like to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank Singapore for their great involvement in this conference, which enabled to do such a conference. And especially, I would like to thank my two young collaborators. I'm a collaborator with them because this is their show, Anthony Bailin and Daniel Sin. I think you've put together a terrific event. I think I just heard good things. Somehow people didn't complain. So at the moment, I thought that all of you are theater statists hired by them because I've never been in a conference and nobody's complaining. Anybody would like to make one complaint which I feel good? Raise your hand. Who wants to make a complaint? Bunch of chickens, you know. You make a complaint, you are invited next year. Make one complaint. I need one complaint, please.
It needs to happen more often.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Daniel and Anthony, it was really a pleasure and an honor. And on behalf of everybody in the room, thank you very much. Thank you,
Yossi.
Dr. Professor Chen. And see you at the end of April in Singapore, or maybe in Tel Aviv tomorrow.
Maybe in Tel Aviv
Where are you going to be tomorrow?
Because I'm flying there tonight.
Where?
10 o'clock flight tonight.
Where?
Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv.
Yes.
Right. Very good.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Lily, and thank you, Yossi. Also, just in case the time overruns, Yossi, I know you're going on a flight. I wanted to thank you on behalf of Anthony, Mike, and all of us at Acre White for really helping us create today and many more initiatives. And thank you for co-chairing Singapore and other conferences that we'll be creating. We're not quite sure yet. So thank you. And Lily, I promised you we'd get you in a taxi very soon. So we're going to begin the panel. If I don't see you, I'll see you in Singapore. Safe flight. And please give me a round of applause to thank Lily again and Yossi. And if I'd like to invite to the stage Zach Tan, who is the London director of Infocom, one of the Singaporean government investment funds. Take this microphone. There goes. Lindy Heng, who is from the Singapore Economic Development Board. He's over here. I'll go in the middle. Jeremy Yap, who is an angel investor, contrary to his badge of saying that he is unemployed, a very successful angel investor. And another very good friend of mine, Frank Meehan, who's worked so hard today. 5 panels, 5 workshops. I'd like to invite Frank, is the managing partner and co-founder of Spark Labs, a global VC fund. So thank you very much for joining us. I have another mic. Right. The theme of today is we're talking about how Singapore is a hub of innovation and how it's the place where Asian innovation meets the world. Before we do that, could I ask my panelists to say a short sentence about themselves, who they are, why they are here, and what their thoughts are on the world? Very short. Joking.
Well, I'm not sure about the thoughts about the world, but I'm sure able to give some thoughts about Singapore and London. So my name is Zach, and I'm the director of the London office of Infocom Investments. We are a state-funded investment company. So we have $200 million, which we use to invest in startups across the world. And the reason why I'm here on stage and in London is because I'm here to actually have fun, like what Yossi said. So yeah.
And are you going to be in Singapore on the 28th of April?
I'll definitely try my best to.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Well, hi there. I'm Lindy from the Singapore Economic Development Board. We are a government agency, and a lot of the work that we do is about charting out the industrial strategy for Singapore. And we work hand in hand very closely with the foreign companies that are interested to expand in Singapore. I'm based in London. I'm the center director of our office. And the reason why I'm here today is really for the wine, I think.
Very good. And where are you going to be on the 28th of April?
Hopefully in Singapore.
Fabulous. Very good. Jeremy.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jeremy. Previously, I worked in the city as a derivative trader, helping the world economy collapse. These days, I sort of help my own savings drop at a similar rate, investing in startups all over the world. Originally from Singapore, proud graduate of the National University of Singapore, and very excited to be in my homeland on the 28th of April next year.
Fabulous. You see, he's learning the answers. And Frank, hello. Tell us about yourself.
I follow Jeremy. Whatever Jeremy does, wherever he goes. I started Spark Labs last year. We're an accelerator in Korea, which started to become very big. And then we started a global seed stage fund with 6 partners, which are Singapore, based in Singapore, Seoul, San Francisco, Tel Aviv, and London.
So just on that note, as you can tell by Frank's accent, he's originally Welsh. But Frank, how did you suddenly discover this whole, really probably being one
Singapore?
of the, not just Singapore, but Asia. How did you end up doing all these investments over there?
So I lived in Asia. I lived in Singapore in the 90s. Fell in love with Singapore. Everyone always said Singapore's boring. I found it incredibly a lot of fun. You make your own fun wherever you are, and I'm pretty good at that. And I really enjoyed it, and I loved the buzz, and I loved the way it was such a hub, and you could see the where it was going, and just following it over the years, and now so when we set up the new fund, I was extremely keen to have one of our hubs in Singapore, because it is literally there are 3 places in Asia you really need to care about, which is in tech, and that is Singapore, Seoul, and Shanghai, and Shenzhen. They all start with S. Yeah.
It's all about the S. What about the letter D first? Daniel Seal, is that right? Very good. Jeremy, tell us your story, how you basically, obviously, one of the interesting things about Singapore, as I remember we've chatted, is this whole drive for working hard, studying hard from national service to then looking. How do you think that the background of growing up in Singapore has helped you really become quite a successful angel investor and trader? How's your growing up there helped where you are today?
Well, I think I'm much better at math than I would be if I grew up anywhere else. So Singapore has the highest math scores of anyone at the primary school and secondary school level. But yeah, no, I think growing up in Singapore was amazing. It's something that you don't have to really worry about safety. You don't worry, cost of living back then was really, really low. Education system was top in the world, and it's obviously made me who I am today, so I'm very, very grateful.
Right, and Lindy, obviously the Singapore government is one of probably the most innovative ones in pushing really entrepreneurship. You see how the departments, how's that come from? How have you seen, coming into the UK, people and Europe really, that you're responsible for the take-up of, do they understand fully the Singapore landscape? You're seeing, obviously Asia, we're going to talk a little bit, everyone's focusing on China and India, but they're tough markets. How are you seeing people are using Singapore as their launch pad? What kind of have you been seeing over the past few years of doing this?
So obviously, Asia is a growth story, and we see a lot of companies interested in Asia. But I think what we've observed in the past couple of years is a growing interest in Southeast Asia. I think part of that is because of the slowing growth in China. I mean, it's still very high at 7-8%. But a lot of companies, people like General Motors, for instance, they actually relocated their international, or rather Asia Pacific headquarters from China to Singapore earlier this year. And one of the reasons is because they are looking at Southeast Asia and some of the growth opportunities there. And again, we have other examples of companies like Kellogg, for instance, where they moved their regional headquarters from Australia to Singapore, again, to be closer to some of the growth markets in our part of the world.
Yeah, thank you. Zach, we spoke last week, you know, everybody's talking a lot about smart cities, and you said to me, but there is a smart nation. Can you maybe explain what that means? Because it's quite a bold and interesting statement. So can you maybe share with everyone this concept of a smart nation?
Right. So just now, Yossi asked about who has been to Singapore. So my question to the floor is, who has heard about Singapore? Please raise your hand. So you guys know that Singapore is a city-state. It is a very small island. It's probably not much bigger than Liechtenstein, right? Or Lithuania, for that matter. So what it means is that for Singapore, some of the infrastructure that the government is putting in place to enable connectivity everywhere, everyone, everything would apply to the nation as a whole. So there are many smart cities in the world, but we think that we are the only smart nation because of our size.
Can you just maybe just explain a little bit more, and other people jump in, about how a smart city can really be created? Because obviously it's not just about, you know, we see London, these other places, but it's about the commitment to infrastructure. What have you seen? Because one of the things, just being objective, I've seen of Singapore is they've gone for this long-term approach and looking at from the infrastructure, from the telco. What have you seen of what's actually happening with the smart city? Can you share with some programs?
Yeah, I can. In fact, if you guys have been keeping up with some of the news recently related to Smart Nation initiative from Singapore, what we have set up, at least at the government level, is a body within the government that coordinates all the Smart Nation activities around the different government agencies, and it's going to be chaired by the Prime Minister's office. So the agenda of Smart Nation is pretty much at the top of the nation's agenda. And what we are actually looking at is taking small steps. This is the beginning of the journey. So, for example, our parent organization, so I'm from Infocom Investments. My parent organization is this agency called Infocom Development Authority of Singapore. So they are laying the network, the sensor network in Singapore, to allow some of this connectivity to happen in the future. So I wouldn't say that we have everything smart at the moment in Singapore. We have a lot of, we have the top class e-government infrastructure. We have a lot of the different pieces of the puzzle in place. But I think there's still a pretty long way to go before we can sort of call ourselves a smart nation. We think that we can accomplish that in 10 years, and that would sort of broadly allow us to achieve this concept of connectivity everywhere, everything, everyone.
And Frank?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, the thing I love about Singapore is, it's kind of like London. I mean, it's so cosmopolitan. I mean, most other cities in Asia tend to have, like, you know, quite a strong focus about, like, their own country, but Singapore really is the same as London. It's got so much, everyone, you know, from everywhere is there, and I think that leads to a great deal of innovation. And, you know, as you know, we power you know, one of Asia's new smart cities, Songdo in Korea, and it's incredibly interesting. Like, you know, the population that's moving in there are becoming beta testers of all the IoT stuff that we're putting into it. And I think the same in Singapore. There's a great willingness to try things and to use things, particularly from a tech perspective across the population. And you know, it's an innovative population, but it's got that tendency. It has to go out. You know, it has to look out, and it's always had that. And, you know, if I look at the three places I'm interested in companies, if I was to base a company, there's only three places I'm interested in basing a company, and that is London, San Francisco, and Singapore. I don't really think those would be my three top places to base a company.
Can you elaborate on why each of those three? Why London?
I think London because, you know, it is the centre of Europe. I really, you know, it has such a great influx of people coming in and out, and there's good infrastructure here, but there's also a lot of money that's been put into it. San Francisco for obviously the same reasons, etc. But the same in Singapore. I mean, Singapore, you know, if you look at venture capital is still an early stage type of thing in Asia, right? I mean, you know, Asian VCs still tend to ask for like personal guarantees and crap, you know. So, but Singapore's kind of moved on from that, you know. And if you're trying that kind of game in Singapore, you're not going to get very far. And there's some great accelerators. They've tried different things. There's some great investment opportunities there. And I think if you've got SEIS and EIS here, you've got similar type of structures in Singapore. I don't think people really appreciate the tax advantages, the breaks, the government support. You know, it's freaking huge. So I think, you know, it's often.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to follow up on the cosmopolitan point. I mean, I think some facts that people don't know about Singapore is we're 5.5 million people. Of that 5.5 million people, like 1.5 million, almost a third of the people are actually expatriates, foreign workers who are living in Singapore. And you know, maybe people know about that. But I think a lot of people don't realize is that even in our local population, we are massively diverse. We've got Indian, Malay, Chinese communities. In our public holidays, we celebrate Eid, we celebrate Diwali, we celebrate Chinese New Year, we celebrate Christmas. And it's an ethos of the nation. You know, we are a city-state which is built on cosmopolitan, built on diversity. So we have a population that understands every culture in the entire Asian continent, and everyone speaks English. English is the language of government. English is the language of schools. Everyone learns all of their lessons in school in English, and I think that's sort of makes it a sort of a unique international center for all of Asia.
It's very easy for someone, you know, from anywhere to go to Singapore and live in Singapore. It's like one of my favorite places to live. It's really easy, you know, and that's really
Yeah,
good.
I think we call it 101 for Asia. If you haven't been to Asia before, I think Singapore helps to ease you in to some of the
Very true. Then you can
Asians
just
for
other
dummies, they
venture
call
out
it.
on the weekend somewhere else and come back
Indeed.
again.
Yes, exactly. Boat Key and the other areas.
Yeah.
Just talking about the startup scene, obviously one of the things which we're all interested in is this growth, this startup ecosystem. I'm going to start with Jeremy, then to Zach, and then on to you, Frank. What are you seeing? Let's start with Singapore, then Asia. What are you seeing as the key areas growing? Like, what's coming out of there? Because obviously different clusters have different key sectors.
Yeah, I guess Singapore as an indigenous city-state for a startup scene is a bit tricky, I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's 5 million people. We're obviously like a society that understands that we need to be more creative, but we're sort of built upon the idea of execution and sort of doing things very, very well and doing things to procedure. But this is something that's changing. You know, we're seeing a lot of government initiatives. Education is changing. Programming is becoming more and more important. And we're not, I mean, even comparing it to London, like we're seeing a lot of things that are very interesting coming out of the startup scene. Governments are starting to make things more easy for people to start businesses. People are coming in. We've got foreign entrepreneurs coming into Singapore, sort of as a city-state to sort of create companies. We have a $200 million exit to Rakuten called Vicky. We've just had a $100 million exit from Nonstop Games into King. And even on the local scene, everyone is familiar with Creative Technologies, the Sound Blaster card, billion-dollar company, 15 years ago, first MP3 player before the iPod. And even now, I mean, like, I don't know if it's public knowledge, but the word on the street is we have our next billion-dollar company where Intel Capital has been told to be investing in Razer, which makes laptops, gaming mice, and which is something that's very, very exciting for us. And this is from our local population, you know, people coming from the engineering schools. And I think we're seeing a lot more of this, and when we see a lot more of this coming through, when we get our first billion-dollar exit, I think that's when things are going to really, really take off. I mean, just locally. I mean, not to mention Southeast Asia as a whole, which I'll talk about later, maybe.
Zach.
Yeah, I think Singapore has, like London, great access to talent. It has great access to government support. It has great access to a lot of different cultures, and that makes starting up very interesting in Singapore.
And obviously,
Yeah.
can you talk about your different, because you've got a few areas you operate, obviously you've got Korea, you've got Singapore, you've got others. How are you seeing, is there like these clusters?
Well, we set it up. I mean, we set up Spark Labs to be in the core, the really, really core clusters. So that's, you know, San Francisco, Singapore, London, Tel Aviv, Seoul. And, you know, the only one we missed out in China, but China doesn't really need us. I mean, so, you know, you're fine in China, so you don't need anyone to scale you. But I think, you know, I'm here and we set up Singapore because I truly freaking love Singapore. I mean, I fell in love with the place when I was there, and I've been promoting it ever since. And everyone tells me, you know, for the last 10 years, when someone's talked about chewing gum, I'm like, dude, like it's like seriously, we got to move on beyond the chewing gum thing, really. And it's got such a vibrant ecosystem, and it's so much interesting. But I think, Singapore's got great operational skills. So e-commerce, the businesses like, e-commerce, gaming, IoT in terms of like, scaling. Like Singapore is excellent for scaling, so it's where, people can start anything anywhere. But, if I wanted to scale something, I'd move to Singapore if I was in Asia.
Okay, let's just answer this question, understanding what's going on. Most startups, companies want to go where the money is. That they think, right, the world's global. How are you seeing at the moment that is Singapore actively going to be attracting Western startups, companies to come set up and use it? And maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And is the funds available? Because some people talk, and there's a lot that do. And what are you seeing people are actually doing about it, especially what's Singapore doing about this?
Maybe let me talk about the market and access to market from Singapore. So now a lot of people are aware that in Southeast Asia, there's actually 600 million people, which is actually quite sizable. And in terms of the GDP, the collective GDP of Southeast Asia is actually behind, I think, China and Japan. So we're actually, for Southeast Asia as a whole, it's the third largest collective GDP. And we're seeing very good growth in the region as well, about 5.5% for the past 5 years, and we expect that to continue. So we do see a lot of companies, big and small, coming to Singapore, not just for the Singapore market because we're so small, but really to access some of the markets around us. And in doing so, they're able to find partners in the ecosystem in Singapore, especially for the Singapore government. I think what we want to do and what we're very good at is about being proactive, about working with companies, about creating what we call living labs. So for instance, Singapore, we don't have a lot of natural resources. I think we've tried digging, but I don't think we found any oil so far. So a lot of focus for us is about talent development, is about innovation. And in particular, we have some national needs. And I think one of the test bits that we've launched and we've been quite successful at is what we call the Safe City test bit, where we actually provided access to companies in 4 different neighborhoods in Singapore to some of the, say, CCTV data over there, integration of the data sets over there, to address some of the problems, be it, petty theft or littering. And these companies are able to use and access some of the data sets to create new solutions to address some of the problems in Singapore and some of our national needs. But at the same time, it's about how can they then export some of these solutions to the markets around us. So that's some of the work that we've been doing with companies out in Singapore.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think you mentioned about capital, talent follows capital. I think what is important for startups is actually what Lindy has mentioned, is all about market access, right? And if you as a startup, you don't have market access, you basically would be starved of growth opportunity. And what we are seeing in Southeast Asia is that growth opportunity. You have 600 million population just around Singapore, but more importantly, you are facing these 600 million people who for the first time has a significant amount of disposable income, and they are trying to deploy that disposable income to increase their quality of life. So you have people who are actively looking to travel. So if you're a travel startup, you should definitely look at the Southeast Asian market, because everyone aspires to a higher standard of living in Southeast Asia. And right now, for the first time in a very long time, they have the means to do so. And regarding how we put money where our mouth is, I speak for Infocom Investments. We have been investing in startup companies for the past 15 years. We have helped almost 100 foreign venture-backed startups explore the Asian opportunities or Southeast Asian opportunities through Singapore over the past 5 years or so. So while we are an investor and we are looking for returns, like all the other venture capitalists out there, what we are also mandated to do is to talk to startups, understand their needs. If you're based in London, have conversation with you, understand your business, and talk to you about how you could actually implement your solution in Southeast Asia. So I think we have been doing that over the past 5 years, and with our most recent setting up of our presence in London, we want to do a lot more than that. We want to form partnerships, we want to understand what the needs of the London community is, and we want to create that bridge between investors and startups across the ecosystems in Europe, well, specifically London, UK, and Europe, to Singapore, because we see there's tremendous value for a strong bridge for startups, for investors, for business opportunities in general.
Yeah, I'll just add to that one. So one of the things, you can think of Singapore in some ways as the Mayfair of Southeast Asia, in the fact that most big rich families and etc. have an office in Singapore and in the Southeast Asia. And so, you know, it is a very interesting, and these families and these firms are starting to think about, particularly the families are starting to think about like investing into tech. You know, they've got, you know, traditionally out of real estate or mining or commodities, etc. And now they've made a lot of money, and now they're thinking, okay, now we'd like to participate in the tech scene. And that's fueling a lot of it. So it is, you know, you can't just turn up there and expect to, you know, get money and go back. But I do think starting to work with Singaporean representatives out here, and then starting to think about going out there and starting to work with it. There is a lot of capital that's very interested in tech, and e-commerce particularly.
I think the crazy statistic that, again, people aren't very aware of is 1 out of every 5 Singaporean households is a cash millionaire.
Wow. Just to ask the audience, how many of you have done or are doing business in Asia in general? Can you raise your hand? How many of you would like to do business in Asia? Okay, for those of you who have your hands raised, why haven't you? Or dead? No, but is it because just people don't know quite how to do it? Don't know the opportunity, right? So, and what do you think would give people the opportunity? What is it that you're looking for to understand? Is it people are scared of the market, not quite sure of understanding? Why not? Shout out, Shy. Why have you not done business yet in Asia? Sorry for picking on you, you were talking. Oh, you have, sorry.
He had his hand up first, man. Watch it.
Figured out a way to build a process, and building a process in place that can scale, that can grow, that both parties understand how to build business is something extremely significant. So for us, for Israelis, the US market was always almost around the corner, although it's the other side of the world. Similar culture in a way, everybody speaks English. It was Silicon Valley versus Tel Aviv was almost around the block. I think that is changing. It's changing dramatically. China is open, the Far East is opening. One of my companies is a gaming company, and they sell, I think, more in Asia than they sell in the US or in Europe. So definitely there is a great direction to go and to explore and to build a partnership.
Thank you. And who here is also looking or done business recently in Southeast Asia? Anyone here is targeting the Southeast Asia market? Toby. Oh, Tony, go on.
Hi, Tony. Yeah. I mean, I've done business in Southeast Asia.
And what was your experience?
So it was good. I mean, I was working for Skype, running mobile partnerships, and we built a very strong partnership with Telkomsel, which is Indonesia's leading mobile operator. My experience was that I actually, you know, there's red tape involved in big companies, but actually one of the key parts of the alignment with in understanding how business was done was that actually those businesses are run pretty leanly and focused on execution. So I'd done partnerships with companies like Verizon and Hutchison with Frank. But what I found was that you had to be more focused on what the goal was going to be. and you had to, there was a lot. It was a lot easier to implement stuff, so it was very.
And
positive.
behind you, Toby Goldblatt, you raised your hand before, so do you want to? You were talking about your Asian experience.
Well, I think the simplest, the most important thing that I've found with working in Southeast Asia is to treat each market as its own market and not try and treat it as a region or a territory or what have you, and be very sympathetic to the needs of those local markets. And also not trying to service all markets from a central hub. You've got to be in the market to service it.
No, absolutely. And just from my experience of been going to Singapore quite a few times now this year, the ease of doing business, I've worked in many different places, and it really lives up to its expectation of setting up a company very, very simply, English law. And are you seeing, Lindy, that yourself, that people are really seeing that as one of the key factors, that it's really simple and efficient to do so?
Well, I'm not sure if any of you picked up the news a couple of days ago when in the EIU rankings for 2014, Singapore was ranked as the easiest place to do business globally. So yeah, I think that people, companies are recognizing that as a base to do business, to conduct your regional business, especially for Southeast Asia, Singapore is a good place to do that. In fact, there are more than 7,000 multinational companies in Singapore today, and more than 60% of them have some sort of regional headquarters in Singapore. Take Unilever, for instance. They have about 800 people out there. They have an innovation center out there, and a lot of their global brands, for example, SK2, which is a cosmetics product, is managed out of Singapore. But I think the other angle, that another trend that we've observed is also about companies being in Singapore, in Asia, and innovating for Asia, because a lot of companies underestimate how fragmented the Asian market is, and it's not about Asia, but it's really about, different countries, more than 2,000 languages. So this concept of Asian consumer insights is something that we've seen companies develop capabilities in as well. One interesting case study. So there's a French company called Essilor. Not sure if any of you have heard of them, but they manufacture the lenses that go into your glasses. So they did a study with the Institute of Asian Consumer Insights in Singapore, and found that for Asians, we actually have a tendency to read things closer to our faces. I'm not sure why, but as a result, they have actually developed a lens that provides a wider focal area just for the Asian market. So new products for Asia and innovating that out from Singapore.
Thank you. I'm conscious that we've had a long day, so I think I'd like everyone, if they can give us a final thought on Asian innovation, on Singapore, on life, on startups. Frank, we'll start with you. Or you can have a think.
Wow. Where do I start? I'll tell you one thing. If this was in Singapore or Asia, you'd have a much more mixed group. You'd have much more females and males in the group. You have a lot of the thing in Asia that's very interesting is that you have a great deal of female founders or developers or product people in Asia in startups, far more so than you'll find in the Valley or in London. So I think, and that actually tends to lead to a much more consumer orientated product. I think that's one of the strengths of Asia. It's such a young population. Lots of people not really falling into the old kind of ways of the world, and the buzz and the vibrancy there is fantastic, and it is really going places. Of course it is, right? So and Singapore really is the hub of a lot of what's going down in Southeast Asia. I think you have to be there very soon.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I think the innovation coming out of Asia is very, very interesting. You're going to see. I think a good example is sort of innovations in messaging. We've all seen the WhatsApp exit. No one in America actually uses WhatsApp. Everyone in Singapore does. We're the major users in Southeast Asia of ICQ. A lot of the innovations that are happening in that space comes out of Asia. I think you can see a lot of that in a lot of different fields. And I think to just completely ignore a market like Asia is a complete mistake. And these are the sort of the trends that you're seeing. You know, Skype, obviously, most of their users coming out of Asia. Recent Sequoia investment is a Truecaller out of Europe. You're going to see most of their users coming out of Asia. And if people aren't realizing that this is a massive market, this is where a lot of the early adopters of technology are going to be, like the highest mobile use in the world, then you're going to be sort of missing out on the next big thing, I think.
Thank you. Zach?
Right. I just have 5 words. Be bold, find right partners.
Lindy?
Okay, well, I'm not sure how to continue from that, but so I think for a lot of you out there that's new to Asia, I think Singapore, as I've said, is like a 101 for Asia. It's very similar in terms of, say, the rule of law to the UK, its ease of doing business, but it's also about the ecosystem and the investment that the government has done to actually, in the type of capabilities and partners and the talent that you can find out there in Singapore to access the regional market.
Absolutely. And with that, I'd like to, if any of you want to check out the phenomenal Asian digital and startup ecosystem, there's only one event you should be going to. It's InnoFest unBound that's going to be happening in Singapore. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my panelists, Frank. Big round of applause for Jeremy, Lindy, and Zach. And also to thank Mark and the rest of the Singapore Tourism Board thank you, Mark, came all the way from Singapore to be here. So thank you. And we look forward to seeing you all in Singapore. We're going to be doing a similar dialogue in Tel Aviv, another one at Mobile World Congress 4 years from now. And looking forward to seeing you on our journey and seeing you in Singapore. Thank you. And good night. Not in 4 years, the conference is called 4 years from now, a Mobile World Congress. Thank you and good night.